हाँ प्रशांत मोटा हो ना कौन
ସାର୍ ସାର୍
से कैमेरा पाख पळै आसले मोटा हिजबो आ कोन
हाँ कमर पर इतना मुहटा बड़ देखा जाउछि तमर भी
मु भी नहीं आइछि आज्ञा
चलीछि
प्रफुल्ल सर टिके स्वास्थ्य टिके कमी जाइछि मोर भी टिके कमी जाइछि
कार तमर हाँ टिके झड़ी जाय
मोर भी झड़ी सर
सर स्टार्ट करबा
ठीक अछि
नमस्कार समस्त को शुभ सकाळ आज आम आमर कॉन्फ्रेंस रो तृतीय दिन रे पहुंची जाइछंती आज आम दुईटी सेशन आमर एकेडमिक शेड्यूल अनुसार आज आमर दुईटी सेशन अछि प्रथम सेशन होची सिम्पोजियम 2 ऑन इंडियन थ्योरीज ऑफ इवोल्यूशन एही सेशन को चेयर करबे प्रोफेसर गणेश प्रसाद दास सिम्पोजिस्ट माने हेले नर्मदा कुमारी परिडा डॉक्टर नंदिता छोटराय डॉक्टर अलकानंद परिडा मिस्टर जगन्नाथ प्रसाद महांती एंड श्रीमती मामिना साहू समस्ते जॉइन कर जाइछंती मो अनुरोध करबी प्रोफेसर गणेश प्रसाद दास को टू चेयर दिस सेशन।
हाँ धन्यवाद लक्ष्मण दर्शन परिषद को प्रणाम प्रोफेसर सरोज सर को प्रणाम अन्य मान को शुभ सकाळ एवं श्रद्धा। The topic of the seminar, topic of the symposium is Indian theories of evolution. Let me say a few words about this to begin with. This is not exactly the theory of creation, but it might be included in the discussion. The Western theory of evolution, like Darwin's origin of species, are not included, but they might come up for comparison and contrast. The Indian theories of evolution, inclusive of creation, might grapple with the following issues. Number one, Srushti kipari hela. How did creation take place de novo? Number two, Jibo Jagatara Srushti kipari hela. How was the world of things and beings created? Number three, Chaitya Jagatara Srushti kipari hela. How was the creation and evolution of consciousness take place? If we come to the Vedas, the Rig Veda Nasadiya Sutra says there was no being, no not-dash being at the beginning. It asks, was it darkness? Was it water? Then the Upanishads respond differently. The Chandogya says, Sat eva somya idam agre asit. Aitariya Upanishad says, Atma ba idam eka agra asit. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Brahma ba idam agra asit. And in contrast with all these three Upanishadic statements, Taittiriya Upanishad says, Asat ba idam agra asit. So according to three Upanishads, Sat, and according to Taittiriya, Asat was there at the beginning. Although for Rigveda, it is not yet certain whether being or not-dash being was there at the beginning. Then we come to the Gita Govinda. The Gita Govinda account has an elaboration in the form of Dasavatara, evolution of life, consciousness, morality, civilization, and culture all in one. Jayadeva's Gita Govinda, about which Professor Saroj Kumar Mahanti, our president, was telling day before yesterday how they lifted the Indian philosophy and culture. There, the account is like this. Then we have articulated doctrines of evolution in Indian philosophy. Number one is Prakriti Parinamavad of Sankhya. Number two is Brahma Vivartavad of Shankara. And number three, Brahma Parinamavad of Ramanuja. Besides these traditional accounts, we have the modern one from Sri Aurobindo in terms of involution and evolution of consciousness. So with this preface, I would now invite Dr. Srimati Narmada Kumari Parida to have the first presentation. We have 4 in all, and if we apportion the time, we would allot 20 minutes to each of the participants, and my request would be not to violate this time limit. If you do not obey me in the chair, then nobody will obey you when you will be in the chair. Thank you very much. Dr. Parida.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. A very good morning to one and all present in this intellectual gathering of 33rd Annual Conference of All Odisha Philosophy Association. I convey my heartfelt regards to esteemed President, Vice President, Organizing Secretary, members of AOPA, Chairperson of Symposium 2, who is my revered teacher, Professor Dr. Ganesh Prasad Das, my co-participants, all invited guests, faculties of philosophy and students present. It is a proud privilege on my part to be a speaker of symposium, so it is my profound duty to express my heartfelt thanks to all the organizers and members of All Odisha Philosophy Association. I would like to present my paper on the topic Modern Theory of Evolution from a Vedantic Point of View. How was our universe created? How did it come to be the seemingly infinite place as we know of today? These are the questions that have been puzzling philosophers, scientists, and scholars since the beginning of time. As a result, different scientific and philosophical theories emerged to explain how the universe came into being. Origin and evolution of the universe constituted an important subject in Indian philosophical system since the Vedic times. Indian cosmology reached its perfection with most of its findings resulting from direct experience of ultimate reality. Many modern scientists, including Edwin, also believed that. We can find different viewpoints about evolution in Indian philosophical systems. Different sources like Vedas, the Vedas, Upanishads, Brahmanas, and Puranas contain diverse views. Some of these views are based on philosophical concepts, while others Brahma is described as performing this art of creation. Brahma is a part of Trinity of gods that also includes Vishnu and Shiva. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are described as creator, preserver, and destructor of the universe respectively. In Satpat Brahman, it is mentioned that the current human generation descends from Manu. In Hindu scripture, the concept of Dasa Avatar can be seen as having some similarities with to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. The first incarnation of Vishnu in the form of fish resembles the evolutionary origin of fish. So Hindus already had present notion of common ancestry between humans and animals. And Hindu Dharma also believes that gods have animal features. So the aim of this paper is to correlate Indian theories of evolution, especially Vedic and Upanishadic theory of evolution, with that of modern scientific theory of evolution, with special reference to Charles Darwin as well as the Big Bang theory of evolution. Scholars have found that the theories of evolution correlates with Indian theories of evolution, particularly the theory of evolution in Hinduism, correlates with Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Vedanta philosophy is not concerned with the theory of evolution of species. Rather, Vedanta is mainly concerned with the evolution of consciousness, not the body. So Hinduism is the only religion which totally and unconditionally accepts the evolution of species. Hinduism believes that the universe manifests, remains manifest for a while, and then goes back to the unmanifest. So manifestation is an evolutionary process, while unmanifestation is a devolutionary process. Darwin only addresses the evolutionary process and therefore part of the whole process. So the main difference between Hinduism and the Darwinian theory of evolution is that while Darwin addresses only the evolution of physical bodies in his theory of evolution, Hinduism addresses the evolution of soul, the consciousness. This governs the evolution of physical body. The theory of that the Dasavataras provide a true sequential depiction of the great unfolding of evolution. These 10 avatars of Vishnu show an uncanny similarity to the biological theory of evolution of life on Earth. Now let us discuss or take a glance of some of the important views of evolution found in different Indian philosophical systems. And the prominent is the Sankhya theory of evolution. And the idea of evolution is basic to all Indian thought. We should understand both the modern theory of evolution and Indian theories on it. Sankhya is the Indian theory of evolution which is supposed to apply to both individual and the cosmos. The basic entities of Sankhya theory of evolution are pure consciousness, that is Purusha, and materiality, that is nature. So Sankhya philosophy belongs to the 6 orthodox systems of Indian philosophy, and we can find a rationalistic approach in Sankhya to solve philosophical problems. And the distinguishing feature of Sankhya lies in its discussion on issues about life and reality, free from religious bias. We know that evolution is the process of gradual development, plants, animals, etc., from simple to more complicated forms. 2 theories regarding the causation of the world is found in Indian philosophy. One is creation and the second one is evolution. The idealists accept creation, whereas the materialistic systems accept evolution. Sankhya philosophy, being a materialistic philosophy, accepts the theory of evolution with regard to the causation of the world. The etymological meaning of the word Prakriti is that which evolves. In other words, whatever evolves is Prakriti or nature. It is the ultimate material cause of the world. The Sankhya system, with the help of Sakarya, establishes the existence of Prakriti as the root cause of the world. The world is not the cause, but has evolved from the unmanifested source, variously called as Prakriti or Pradhana or Abhyakta. Though unmanifested, the existence of Prakriti can be inferred from its products. Prakriti transforms into the world of our experience. It is uncaused and so regarded. Prakriti, since it is the basis of all existence, matter, life, and mind. Prakriti is not the primal matter, but the potential cause of all, and has in it the potentiality of all things and beings of the world. So according to Sankhya Pravachana Sutra, Prakriti is constituted of 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is the nature of pleasure and tends to conscious manifestation and gives pleasure to the individual. Rajas causes hectic activity and restless efforts and causes pain. Tamas resists activity leading to apathy and indifference. These 3 are not separate, though different from one another, when they cooperate to produce the world of objects. Physicist Erwin also states that the Sankhya Tattvas were the most plausible model for evolution of sensory organs. A quote on evolution of Earth from the 1000-year-old encyclopedia Yoga Vaisishta. I remember that once upon a time there was nothing on this earth, neither trees and plants, nor even mountains. For a period of 11,000 years, the earth was under lava. Later, apart from the polar region, the rest of the earth was covered by water. Then forests developed the earth, and the great asuras or the demons ruled. Then arose great mountains, but without any human inhabitants. For a period of 10,000 years, the earth was covered with curses of asuras, and men arose later on. Besides Sankhya systems, we also find different views or theories about evolution in other systems of Indian philosophy like Charbak. In its philosophical import of scientific and naturalistic approach to metaphysics, Charbak denies the supernaturalistic explanation of origin of the universe. Because of its scientific temperament, Charbak was not concerned with truths that could not be verified. So it posited that the world itself and all material objects of the world are real, and they held that all existence can be reduced to the four elements of earth, water, air, and fire, and all things come into existence through the combination of these four elements, and will perish with the philosophical structure. Is also a product of a matter. A particular combination of these four elements give rise to consciousness. The body is the substratum of consciousness, and this can be proved by Charbak by taking the example from medical science that certain foods and drinks have the properties conducive to the intellectual power of man. It proves the relation of consciousness with the body and the material ingredients like food, drink, etc. It proves the correlation of consciousness with the material ingredients. So Charbak holds the position that the origin and the purpose is not discoverable through scientific means. As there is no certainty about the origin of the universe, the most probable explanation is that it develops as a result of a series of random events. Likewise, in Jainism, we also find that the universe is without a beginning or an end, and is everlasting and eternal. And 6 fundamental entities known as Dravya constitute the universe. And the Jaina evolutionary theory is based on grading of physical bodies containing souls according to the degree of sensory perception. Now let us come to Buddhism. In Buddhism, evolution is not explicitly mentioned. The major principles of Buddhism don't contradict evolution. Even many Buddhists tacitly accept the theory of evolution. Many Buddhists don't think about evolution, as these kinds of questions are not meaningful for Buddhistic goal, that is Nirvana. In his book, The Universe in a Single Atom, The Convergence of Science and Spirituality, the Dalai Lama dismisses the element of randomness in the theory of evolution based on natural selection. Now come to the end of this topic of this paper, that is modern theory of evolution. I take it as the Big Bang theory of evolution, and let us discuss the Big Bang theory of evolution in a nutshell. The Big Bang theory is a modern leading explanation about how the universe began. In simple language, it says that the universe with a singular and then inflated over the next 13.8 billion cooled sufficiently to allow the formation of subatomic particles and later atoms, galaxies, stars, planets, and life. The universe, as we know, was created in a massive explosion that not only created matter, but the physical laws that govern our ever-expanding cosmos. This is what the Big Bang theory accepts. The universe began as a teeny point of infinite density that started to expand, and the universe will reach a maximum size and then begin to collapse in on itself. So this resembles the periodic evolution and evolution of Indian theories of evolution accepted by Sankhya and others. In Journal of Cosmology, Hubbard it vehemently criticized and verified the theory of a Big Bang. The Big Bang's originators have not explained what the singularity of zero volume is and how it originated, why and where it existed, and why it exploded. Existence cannot be born out of non-existence. According to the Satkaryavada theory of causation, everything that exists has a cause, and so this singularity too must have a cause, which is skipped over by the exponents of the Big Bang theory. European scientists, starting from the time of Einstein, favored the Big Bang model as a viable explanation for the origin and nature of the universe. But whatever may be the defects and the deficiencies of Big Bang theory, Advaita Vedanta is never in conflict with modern science. I think what has been stated as singularity and infinite state in the Big Bang theory is nothing but an elaboration of a Vedantic concept of Brahman. In a paper submitted by the physicist Stephen Hawking, showed that the singularity were an inevitable condition of general relativity and the Big Bang model of cosmology. This view very much resembles the strict monistic tendency of Vedantic philosophy. Again, the zero volume of infinite resembles the imperceptible nature of Brahman. To illustrate the point, we have the famous illustration of Nyagrodha tree in Chandogya Upanishad. In of sage Udalaka to his disciple,
मैडम कोड अच्छा अपना नेटवर्क पाउन बोधे झरका टे नल खोली दियंतु
Okay, sir.
झरका खोल देले पुनी रास्ता रो केना सब तो पड़े छ
नल तो वीडियो टा ऑफ कर दिए हां हां तंगर को नेटवर्क
अच्छा वीडियो
हां नल ठीक है चलो चलो हां चलो
सर बटन सुभुची की
सबुची हां हां
आवर्तन सुबुची
You are audible. The video
वीडियो ऑफ कर दे भलो
आज्ञा सर
data page internet speed टा যথেষ্ট হবে।
okay
Or
sir.
you can control it. You
sir,
can make it on or off.
okay sir.
अद्वैतिक डॉक्ट्रिन
What has been sir बटन सुभिला
ହଁ ଶୁଣା ତ ଯାଉଛି ଦେଖ
ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଶୁଭୁଥିଲା ଏବେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଶୁଭୁଛି କିନ୍ତୁ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ହଁ କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁ
okay sir. What is the singularity and infinite state in the Big Bang theory is nothing but an elaboration of a Vedantic concept of Brahman. Even in a paper submitted by the physicist Stephen Hawking, showed that singularity were an inevitable initial condition of general relativity and Big Bang model of cosmology. This view very much resembles the strict monistic tendency of Vedantic philosophy. Again, the zero volume of infinite resembles the imperceptible nature of Brahman. To illustrate the point, we have the famous illustration of Nyagrodha tree in this regard. In Upanishad, in course of his instruction, sage Udalaka to his disciple Shvetaketu regarding the nature of Brahman. He was told that Brahman constitutes the essence of all. That is the case. Shvetaketu asked the question, how can we prove that Brahman is the cause out of which the entire universe arises? Udalaka asked Shvetaketu to fetch a fruit from Nyagrodha. That was instead great fruit. When seed is broken, not anything visible could be found. Then Udalaka said, my son, that substance that you don't find there, of that the very essence of Nyagrodha tree exists. Believe it, my son, that being which you don't find that subtle essence, even that all this world has for itself. It is the truth, and that is the Brahman. It is in the first part of his instruction, Sage Udalaka is postulating an all-comprehensive spiritual reality, which he calls being, to explain the origin of all things, the cause of the entire universe. So, what is important is the force of the supernatural content. To a quote from Albert Einstein, what is important is the force of the superpersonal content and conviction concerning its overpowering meaningfulness. Both spiritualists as well as scientists equally admit that the reason that works out the cosmic existence is definitely imperishable and superpersonal. This is how the imperishable would make him immutable. Now come to the last part of the paper, that is conclusion portion. In my opinion, these two thought lines are parallel and not tangent to each other. The spirituality of Vedanta philosophy is not at all a hindrance for the serial progress or regress in the biospecies of the universe. We can conclude that evolution is pondered over in Vedanta philosophy in two directions. The ethico-religio-spiritual direction describes the journey of soul with the help of theory of karma and rebirth. The empirical suggests that in the struggle for existence, certain bioforms are created by adaptation and certain bioforms extinguish because of the low willpower. And it all happened due to the earnest instinct to live and also due to love karma. As a description about the evolution of the universe, the Big Bang theory has a significant bearing on philosophy. Many fundamental issues which are unresolved by the theory of a Big Bang remains mysterious. To unravel the mysteries of existence, Vedantic theory of evolution in a sense includes Big Bang evolution deals with physical as well as mental aspects too, and so in a sense transcends the scientific theories of evolution. This is all about my paper. Thanks to all of you for a patient hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Narmada Kumari. You began with the scriptural account of creation, and you tried to correlate it with the scientific theory of evolution, especially Darwin's theory of evolution. You have mentioned that the Hindu account of creation, what is that Hindu account? I don't know. Hindu account of creation is cyclic. You brought in the Sankhya doctrine of evolution, then Charvaka's speculative chemistry, then Jaina account, then finally you brought in the scientific theory of Big Bang, which is actually not a theory but boils down to a story. You say that Big Bang theory is an elaboration of Advaita doctrine of Brahman, and then you say that it has a tremendous impact on the philosophical theory. You say both ways, and then you say that the scientific theory and the philosophical doctrine, they are all parallel to each other. The perennial question remains whether the scientific theory confirms the philosophical view or the philosophical view is itself a scientific account. That remains to be pondered over. We will take up the queries at the end of all the presentations. I now invite Dr. Nandita Chotray to give her presentation. Dr. Chotray.
Sir, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Esteemed chairperson, my review teacher, Ganesh sir, all the esteemed members of the OPA, as well as my esteemed teacher, Saroj sir, Prafula sir, Sarath Paningrai sir, Praharaj sir, Dhaneshwar sir, and all the respected participants of this webinar. I feel myself proud to be a reader of this great symposium. My paper is, as it is, the title Indian Theories of Evolution. The paper contains 3 parts. In the first part, some general views on evolution has been spelled out, following some elaborations of the 2 classic views of Ishwara Krishna and Sri Aurobindo. In the last section, some analysis has been done in respect of the 2 views by comparing with the view and effect of the scientific approach to the issue. And it's been concluded that the view of Sri Aurobindo, which has been termed as spiritual Darwinianism, is preferable as against the available biological theories of evolution. It is because the integral and holistic approach is possible only in philosophical framework, because it is not dependent upon facts. The scope of approach of a scientist has to be limited, and in fact, it has been noticed in the case of the scientists like Darwin, Wallace, and Lamarck. They could never contemplate about evolution in their framework. Their views are confined to physiological approaches and mechanical findings only. Since the topic of symposium is Indian Theories of Evolution, I would like to spell out something on the theories of evolution in general, ending with an analysis and assessment of the Sankhya and Sri Aurobindo's view. I would like to start with a generalization that whatever view or theory of evolution is or can be thought of in philosophy or in science, all those are bound to be speculations, might be supported by some facts or reasonings, whether it is good or bad. Therefore, all the theories are open for further analysis or revision if it is felt warranted. So, India's most ancient philosophical documents, the Upanishads, do not provide any theory of evolution except the well-emphasized view that whatever is there has come out of Brahman and will resolve in Brahman ultimately. So, Brahman is the only source of creation. Among the systems, it is only Sankhya system which has given a specific view in respect of the evolutionary process concerning creation of the 24 evolutes. The theory has been clearly expressed in the Sankhya Karika of Ishwara Krishna, which is supposed to be work of 200 AD. Other systems do not appear to have taken interest in matter of the evolutions. Rather, Shankara, who happens to be most renowned philosopher, has opined that it is a meaningless exercise to think about the creation of world. Srishti Chintakaha Nirarthakaha. After Sankhya, again, the view of evolution became prominent in the human cycle and the life divine of Sri Aurobindo in the contemporary Indian tradition. To put a glance on the Western tradition, in this respect, the Greek philosopher Anaximander, who lived in the 50 and 500 BC, comes to the front, who has made some remarks on explaining how organisms change or evolve. According to him, humans must have descended from those types of creatures whose infants could survive without help. He has concluded that the earliest ancestor must be fish. It is because fish hatch from eggs and immediately begin living with no help from their parents. This is how he claimed that all life began in the sea. In this proposal of Anaximander, the 2 factors which are taken to be most important ones in the scientific approach, namely natural selection and the survival of the fittest, are well anticipated. No other view appears to be prominent until the landmark made in 19th century by Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace. Their theories are based on the principle of the theory of evolution by natural selection. Lamarckism, another theory of evolution, has been developed being based on the principle that physical changes in organism during their lifetime, such as greater development of an organ, could be transmitted to their offspring. But in the recent past, a significant remark has been made by G. Nageshwar Rao, former Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, that the Rasavatar concept of Indian tradition is a better theory of evolution as compared to Darwinism. He justifies by saying that Matsya fish is the first species in earth, followed by Kurma, turtle, and amphibian. The third avatar is Varaha, to teach to save the world. And the fourth one is Narasingha. It is half lion and half human. The fifth one is Vamana, the dwarf man. and it is a complete human but with less maturity. Rao has skipped the sixth incarnation, the warrior Brahmin Parshuram, but he could have said that man tried to acquire intelligence and knowledge on fighting technique to lure over others. Then comes Rama, a perfect human, and later Krishna, a more knowledgeable, logical one. He is more of a politician. We believe that Krishna is a politician, but Rama is not. Like this evolution goes on, he said. This view of Rao is quite thoughtful, but has little strength to condemn Darwinism. Rather, we can see a striking resemblance of thinking between the first avatar of our tradition and the thought of Anaximander. In Sankhya theory of evolution, according to Sankhya philosophy of Kapila, evolution begins with the initiative of Purusha acting on Prakriti. Both are real and independent. Critically viewing in this atheistic theory of ultimacy of the infinite non-dual, Brahman is replaced by multiplicity of souls and energies of nature. The works of Kapila has been lost. Ishwar Krishna in Sankhya Karika has mentioned clearly about one evolvement, that is primal nature of Prakriti, and 23 evolutes with the order of evolution. The first element that emerges from Prakriti is called Mahat or Buddhi. From Mahat arises Ahankara or I principle. From Ahankara arises mind or Manas. The effect of Buddhi are 5 primary elements, Tanmatras, things in themselves or essence. 5 Gyanendriya, 5 Karmendriya, and finally from the 5 subtle elements arise the 5 gross elements or 5 great substances, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. These are the revealed aspect of physical universe. So Buddhi, Ahankara, and 5 Tanmatras are both evolvent and evolutes. Mind, 5 Manas, 5 Gyanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas, and 5 Panchamahabhutas are only evolutes. Let us look to the features of later Sankhya theory of evolution. The evolution, technically known as Prakriti Parinama, means actual modification of Prakriti to the world. The evolution actualized when Purusha came in contact with the material Prakriti. In the Trigunatmika Prakriti, the gunas exist in equilibrium state before creation. This state of equilibrium is restored when there is nearness of Purusha with the Prakriti, which is known as Guna Khyava. The Prakriti is the source of the world of becoming. Sri Aurobindo's theory of evolution. Sri Aurobindo has also presented metaphysical theory of evolution. His theory of evolution based on his notion of reality. For him, evolution is nothing but manifestation of consciousness. But this theory has to be understood along with another concept, that is involution. He believes that there is evolution because prior to evolution, there is involution. Evolution and involution are reverse process. Ascent is evolution and descent is involution. The first step is descent. In the process of creation or involution, movement of consciousness has been there to successive lower ones and finally to the matter. If the matter evolves and gives rise to life, and life evolves again and gives rise to mind, that is because consciousness has descended to mind, then to life, and finally to matter. Since there is inherent presence of involution of consciousness down the life from the absolute to the matter, there is evolution from matter is in upward direction. According to Sri Aurobindo, evolution is the inverse action of involution. Let us look to the features of Sri Aurobindo's theory. Evolution is a willed descending of Sachidananda into matter. It comes under his leader. In the evolution process, the unconscious matter is at the bottom. Evolution starts from the matter and its goal is to reach the state of life divine, which is at the top. Matter evolves into life and life evolves into mind. Evolution is rather a triple process of widening, heightening, and integration. Before emergence of life from matter, matter must undergo a qualitative change of self-differentiation. It must be receptive to take a leap to the higher conditions. Similarly, evolution is not only a process of widening, it is also a process of heightening. Evolution of a higher principle of complexity takes place when the conscious force becomes explicit and fully manifest. Apart from these two processes of widening and heightening, another feature of evolution is integration. In evolution, when a higher principle manifests from the lower, the higher principle also changes the lower one. So, in the emergence of life, matter does not cease to evolve, rather it is transferred to cope with the new situation. When mind emerges, matter and life also becomes transformed, matter becoming more sensitive and life more creative in human being. So with the emergence of higher principle of consciousness, all the lower principles get transferred and turned to the system. Man has the potential to realize these higher states through knowledge, effort, and sadhana. So evolution or a gradual self-unfolding is the essential movement of the universe, and the inherent impulse of all life is toward increased unveiling and self-fulfillment. And my assessment is like this. So far as Sankhya view is concerned, yet the problem could not be solved. That how could there be a contact between non-material pure consciousness and material jada prakriti? Shankaracharya has rejected this theory of Sankhya, but it is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa whose view is almost similar with Sankhya philosophy has said that both Brahman and Shakti are real, but they are not independent of each other because they are one and the same thing. When it remains motionless, it is Brahman, and when it initiates creation, it is found as Shakti. He said God himself has turned to the entire universe. This view appears to be theologically very sound and very difficult to establish in philosophy. So far as Sri Aurobindo's view is concerned, first of all, it can be treated as a complete theory in the sense here both involution and evolution has taken into account. Logically considering, there cannot be evolution without involution. So, by mentioning about both involution and evolution, he has given a complete theory. In this perspective, the views of Anaximander, Darwin, and Wallace are having limited scope only. I feel that Professor Praharaj rightly suggests that the true unique features of Sri Aurobindo's theory of evolution are that it accommodates both emergent and purposive view of evolution. Secondly, it is not a single track process. It accommodates both involution and evolution. Thirdly, it has also been viewed as a theory of liberation. Professor R.C. Pradhan has mentioned the doctrine of evolution of Sri Aurobindo to be spiritual Darwinianism and justifies it by saying that Sri Aurobindo has realized it that the evolutionary prospects of man will be highly beneficial for the replacement of dominance of mechanism, which would be the obvious product of the development of science. It is clear from Sri Aurobindo's writing that modern science, obsessed with greatness of its physical discoveries and the idea of the sole existence of matter, has long attempted to base upon physical data, even its study of soul and mind, and our working of nature in man and animal, in which a knowledge of psychology is as important as any of the physical sciences. So its very psychology founded itself upon physiology and the scrutiny of the brain and the nervous system. This is how in modern civilization the dominance of mechanism is prominent. R.C. Pradhan points out that spiritual Darwinianism stands for the evolutionary prospects of human existence, which means the following, namely that human species is a spiritually evolving species, that a spiritual race is possible on earth. The idea of an evolving species is based on the idea that there is a progressive development of the human world. Besides, there is evolution of the species rather than of some single individuals. The idea of a spiritual race is distinctly Aurobindian in view of the fact that there cannot be evolution in the full sense if the race of the human beings remains unevolved. So according to Pradhan, Sri Aurobindo ensures double freedom, the freedom to involve and the freedom to evolve. Thus, there is no trace of mechanism in his idea of spiritual evolution of man. There is an eternal aspiration on the part of man to become spiritually perfect. So this aspiration is the foundation of the spiritual evolution and involution. So freedom is the hallmark of this aspiration. Human beings alone carry this aspiration in the world. In this background, it may be concluded that the spiritual Darwinianism is preferable as against the biological theories of evolution. It is because the integral and holistic approach is possible only in philosophical framework because it is not dependent upon facts. The scope of approach of a scientist has to be limited, and in fact it has been noticed in the cases of the above scientists. They could never contemplate about involution in their framework. Their views were confined to physiological approaches and mechanical findings only. Thank you all for patient hearing.
Thank you, Nanda, for giving a nice presentation and sticking to time. To begin with, you gave a general theory of evolution. Then you came to Sankhya and Sri Aurobindo. You made a comparison between the theories of Darwin and Lamarck with the doctrine of Sankhya. Then you said, and you tried to elaborate that view, which is the view of Sri Aurobindo, that is integral monism, in which all the theories, scientific and philosophic, available in the East and as well as in the West, have been transcended and engulfed into just one doctrine. By the way, you put up Nagaraj Rao's view available in the net about the Dasavataras, where that author says that it is better than Darwinism. But I think there is no comparison between the two. What about the Kalki Avatar then? He has not mentioned about that. And then you also refer to Professor Pradhan by saying that Sri Aurobindo's view, I mean, Darwin's view could be, Sri Aurobindo's view could be characterized as spiritual Darwinism. That also does not sound well, because Sri Aurobindo's view digests all the preceding views, as I said, coming from science and coming from philosophy, both from the West and the East. सब से हजम हो जाइए आ बद हजम ही कहीं रही डार्विन ता भितर. So everything has been digested and transcended, and a new view has been propounded, in which there is evolution and involution both, there is matter and spirit both. Thank you for the nice presentation once again. I now invite, we will put up the questions at the end. If you will be available and remain connected, please try to attend to the questions.
सर वो 12:30 बेलू सर फ्री हेबी मो सेतिक बेल सर चैट बॉक्स दे दे मो सर क्लास
Let us see if you are available and remain connected. Please attend to the queries if they are added to you.
सर
Thank you so much. Now I will come to Mr. Jagannath Prasad Mahanti. He is a faculty in UN Autonomous College of Science and Technology, Oraspur. He would have his presentation now. Mahanti.
Thank you, sir. Pranam. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Esteemed Chairperson, Professor Ganesh Prasad Das, sir. All the honorable members of AOPA, Prafulla sir, Saroj sir, Dhaneshwar sir, my teachers, my colleagues and friends. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present a paper. It all starts with questions like, how does the world come into existence? Has man created all in this world? What is the ultimate of life? Such questions has in all traditions. In class, we discuss the
Signal is breaking.
Is it okay?
Audio failed.
In philosophy, the concept of evolution, a combination of distinct intellectual or philosophical point of view rather than a rigid common of view. As a result, there is not a single canonical account of evolution.
You are not audible. Actually, try to check your internet connection. You are not audible at all.
Signal is very weak. Audio is not available and video is breaking. Very faint.
Video, you can just
put up the video and use the audio only.
And the audio will be enough. My suggestion, if he is not able to connect, then you can go to the other one. And
ଏବେ ଏବେ ଟିକେ ଶୁଣା ଯାଉଛି କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁ କରିପାରିବେ
sir,
କର
just give me a minute, sir.
ହଁ
ନା କହୁଥିଲି କହୁଛି wait ହବ। ଗୋଟେ second.
let me now pass on to the fourth speaker Srimati Mamina Sahu, lecturer Sishu Ananta Mahavidyalaya Balipatna Khurda, and if signal improves we would return to Jagannath Prasad Mahanti. Now Srimati Mamina Sahu.
Namaskar to all. Sir, am I audible?
You are audible. You are audible. Please continue.
Sir, thank you. Esteemed chairperson, respected all teachers and all dignitaries present in this webinar. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizing committee for choosing me as a symposiast in this annual meet organized by All Odisha Philosophy Association. It's a proud privilege for me to present a paper in front of my teacher, all teachers. Now I'm going to present a paper,
Hello?
critical.
Jagannath, please stay on. After
Okay,
after
sir.
Mamina Sahu. After Mamina Sahu.
Okay,
I'm
sir.
going to present a paper, a critical study of evolution in Sankhya philosophy. From the very ancient time, men are curious about the origin of the world, how, when, and why has the universe come into existence. According to Hindu creationists, all species on Earth, including humans, have developed or come down from a high state of pure consciousness. It also claimed that species of plants and animals are material forms adopted by pure consciousness, which live an endless circle of birth and rebirth. The theory of creation of the universe persists in the Vedic and post-Vedic literature. The Vedic thinkers were aware of the philosophical problems of the origin and nature of the world. It is also explained in different Upanishads differently, but one of them, I quote, according to Aitareya Upanishad, only the Atman existed in the beginning. The self created the heaven, the sky, the earth, and underworld. He then formed the Purusha from the water. He also created the speech, the fire, the prana, breath of life, the air, and various senses, the direction, the tree, the mind, and the moon, other things. Different Indian thinkers have their different views regarding the nature of creation, which is very close linked to Dasavatara, 10 principle of incarnation of the god Vishnu, interpreted to convey Darwin's evolution. Life started in water, then it developed, transformed to land, then it transformed to in mammalian stage, transform ape to higher animals. Then there is so many different transformation. Creation process is continue. And my paper is I am going to discuss what is the actual creation in one of the system in Indian philosophy, that is Sankhya system. One of the school in Indian philosophy has explained the nature of creation of the world. In Sankhya philosophy, evolution is symbolized by the Sanskrit term parinama. It is one of the oldest school in Indian philosophy. Kapil was the founder of this school, who has written the script Sankhya Sutra. It's commented by many scholars. Out of those, the significant commentary is known as Sankhya Karika by Ishwar Krishna. There are two different views on the origin of the school. Some are believed that the word Sankhya, which number as well as right knowledge. Right knowledge is about understanding the reality by specifying the number of ultimate constituents of the universe. Others viewed that Sankhya means perfect knowledge, that is about to know the nature of reality. It is, as we know, that it is a dualistic system. There are two distinct fundamental eternal entities. One is pure consciousness, which is Purusha, and other is material substance, which is Prakriti. They both are exist in both absolute dimension. Their nature are separate, but always in proximity of each other. Pure consciousness is non-changing, uh, and a materiality. It is separate of processing, continually changes. The world has evolved out of an unmanifested Abhyakta source, which is Prakriti. Consciousness, the illumination principle which continually pervades. And as such, like a mirror, it shows the materiality, what it is. Consciousness does not create, rather it is eternal principle of the illumination changeless and pervading. In the view of Sankhya philosophy, human beings and all forms are composed of a combination of materiality and consciousness, consist of the three energies of light, action, and inertia. These three energy or gunas continually change. Every cell, every thought, every experience, some type of dimensional change, moment to moment. These energy also have the ability to reside in a balanced state that is called as equilibrium. That stage is we experience peacefulness. These three gunas operate both on the cosmic level and on the individual level. On the cosmic level, the ever-changing, unbalanced gunas manifest all of creation. From the core, potentially cosmic, universal mind, the cosmic planets and stars are created, the season and all the cycle of nature. On the other hand, in individual level, it creates all living creatures and forms organic and inorganic, gross and subtle, come into manifestation. Humankind are the most expensive of potentialities of all creatures. Human person have all the ability to alter thoughts, change intention, and through the free will, make change and transform mental and emotional states. Prior to creation, pralaya, these three gunas of sattva, raja, and tamas are held in the state of cosmic equilibrium. In the unmanifested state, there is no world, no human life, on any form of experience, though our human experience and observation will learn about the manifestation of the world. In this unmanifested state, there is no world, no human life, any form to experience. In deep dreamless sleep, we do not know the world. Deep, deep dreamless is an unknown, unconscious awareness of the state of mental equilibrium. We have 24, according to Sankhya philosophy, their creation process was completed within 24 principle of creation. Out of that, 23 are evolved. Materiality is an eternal principle in its balanced state. Therefore, it is not evolved. It does not evolve from any source because it is uncaused. But everything creates from materiality principles. Materiality, unlike consciousness, has the quality of change due to its composition of the three changing energetic gunas. Matter change, but it is never destroyed. Physics also assured that matter changes and it's never destroyed. In first manifestation into a subtle condition, followed later by dense physical formation, and it is converted in physical formation. According to Sankhya, it is the ever-changing three instrument of creation: light, action. Light refers to sattva, action refers to raja, and inertia refers to tamas, that cause all transformation to occur. The three instruments gunas are root or seed enlivened by pervading consciousness. The guna change moment to moment. Their first evolved is Mahata, or universal cosmic mind, that continue the process of producing evolves, ending with five basic element: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. The mental dimension, the mind and brain are also a product of 24 evolves. Even though we cannot see the mind, it is considered the product of the light, action, and density. What there is a question: what compose thought and expression? In view of Sankhya, the ahankara of a person express knowledge echoed from the cosmic mind of creation. Cosmic mind, Mahata, is the first creation. It exists as the source of subtle and gross manifestation. Cosmic mind, Ahankara, gives rise to individualized and unique evolves according to different types of ego. There is three types of ego: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic ego. The ego of a person accepts or rejects that which arises within the intellect, perception, sensation, and memory. This process became the combination of a person's thought and expression. Sankhya adheres to the concept of plurality of Purusha. According each Purusha is same as the total ocean of consciousness. An analogy is as follows: each glass of lake water contains same composition of total lake, yet there will be a different appearance due to different color of glasses that hold the water. Like there are a difference in thoughts and expression among persons who view this water through different color of glasses. The different color of glasses represent the result of different combination of light, action, and inertia. In the view of Sankhya, the strength of Sattva is purity, which is light, and Rajo, action working together, leads to a liberation for anxiety and pain. A life characterized by tamas, dual-dead energy will lead to the cause and effect of increased mental suffering, a binding to ignorance, and unpleasant retribution due to the set in motion. Then first evolved of Prakriti is the Mahata, cosmic mind. Mahata is the first product which is potentially sound, exists within universal mind. Universal mind contains everything in subtle essence prior to form. It is deep peacefulness. It is formless, contains all the subtle essence from which come all other evolves and all manifested creation. It holds three gunas within it. Ahankara is the second product of Prakriti, which is the feeling of I and mind. Ego operates according to three different frames of reference or viewpoint. Sattva is light and pure intention ego. Raja is the action-oriented ego. Tama is a innate darkness-filled ego. All three of these exist within every dimension and form of creation. Then principle of mind. We have in the vibration of Sattva dominant by Raja, there is two different principle of mind come across. First, 5 organ of perception, Gyanendriya, and 5 motor organs, Karmendriya. The 5 organ of creation and perform the function of perception are the sense of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. The 5 organs of action are perform the function of speech, prehension, locomotion, evocation, and reproduction. In the physical
Summarize kar.
Aage sir. Then Tanmantras draw from the Tamasika ego, which is a subtle essence of the sound, touch, color, taste, and smell. Like the ego of, for example, smelling fragment is sattvic, and activity of smelling is rajasic, and physical structure of the objective nose is tamasic. So in this evolution process, life go day by day. At the time of creation, it will created. At the time of destruction, it will come into the bosom of Prakriti. Sankhya gives a reasonable, my conclusion, Sankhya gives a reasonable framework to intellectually explain creation as well as the meaning and significance of life. Creation is entirely possible. The life exists in two different coexisting eternal separate principles. And every creation, there is three gunas within that creation. Light, action, and unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamina, for keeping to time. At the beginning, you gave an account of the creation of the world as per Aitreya Upanishad. And at the end, you gave an account of Sankhya, Parinambada, which could be described as Sankhya cosmology. You made cursory reference to Jayadeva's Dasavatara and Darwinism also. But dealing with Sankhya philosophy, you found that there are two doctrines, Purusha and two concepts, Purusha and Prakriti, two categories, which are just opposed to one another. But how do they cooperate and correlate with one another to begin the creation? You did not deal with. The crux of the problem lies there. So we will discuss all these things at the end. Now, if Jagannath remains connected to us,
Yes, sir. Yes.
I would request him to have his presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience. Am I audible, sir, now? Hello?
Yes, but now you are audible, yes.
Thank you, sir. Esteemed Chairperson, Professor G.P. Das, all the governing body members, and my teachers, my colleagues and friends. It all starts with questions like how does the world come into existence? How does man originate? How men been created or have been evolved in the world? What is the ultimate goal of life? Such questions have been discussed by many enlightened minds in almost all philosophical traditions. In Indian philosophy, when we discuss the concept of evolution, we find a conglomeration of distinct intellectual or philosophical point of view rather than a rigid common set of beliefs. As a result, there is not a single canonical account of the creation. When we discuss about the Indian theory of evolution, the theories that peeps into our mind first are Prakriti Parinamavada of Sankhya, or the Vivartavada of Vedanta, or the evolution of Sri Aurobindo. But in my paper, I try to show a Buddhistic angle of the evolution of man. As we all know, the term Buddha is not a name, rather it's a concept. Anyone who attains Buddhatva becomes a Buddha. In this paper, entitled Buddha or Becoming Buddha, I haven't decided yet, I try to elaborate the evolution or the transformation of man from suffering to cessation of suffering, or an evolution from ignorance to enlightenment, or from Gautama, the prince, to Buddha, the enlightened one. According to Buddhism, the world is not created in the time, nor is there the necessity to postulate a creator or supernatural entities like God. The world is not something out there as a static or finished product, but is a beginningless process and intelligible through cause-effect dynamics. In first two chapters of Abhidharma Kosha, namely Dhatu Nirdesha and Indriya Nirdesha, Vasubandhu describes the basic elemental force. He introduces and defines the five skandhas, describes the relationship between the five skandhas, 12 ayatanas and 18 dhatus. They are the element with which Vasubandhu constructs his conception of the person and world are clearly set out and discussed. The term Panchaskandha, or the five aggregates, is defined in the simplest classification of all elements of existence, which is represented by a division into five groups of elements. First, the aggregate of material form Rupaskandha, the aggregate of feeling Vedanaskandha, the aggregate of perception Sankhyaskandha, the aggregate of mental formation Samskaraskandha, and the aggregate of consciousness Vijnanaskandha. Everything in this universe is due to a various composition of these two classes, namely Rupa and Nama. Nama consists of Vedana, Sangya, Sanskar and Vijnana. All the external are composition of an infinite small particles or atoms, Parmanu, or the matter particles, which always cluster together and form a pattern or dravya. The entire class of manifest matter formation is known as Rupa Skandha in the widest significance. In a limited significance, Rupa implies the visible only. The terms under Nama constitute all psychic materials. In other words, Rupa and Nama are also called matter and mind. In Abhidharma Kosha, we find 89 types of chitta, like moral chitta, immoral chitta, vipaka chitta, kriya chitta, etc. And also discuss about 52 types of chetika or psychic factors like Vedana, Sangyan, Chetana, Sparsha, Chanda, Prajna, Smriti, Manasikara, Samadhi, Shraddha, Alobha, Advesha, and so on. Now, the other categories of subjective classification of existence consist of the 12 ayatanas and the 18 dhatus. Ayata means place or sphere of meeting or of the origin of the ground of happening. These must be the best considered together. Both are categories which are formulated not from an analysis of the human personality, nor from an objective analysis of external world, but as a result of investigation of the function of consciousness and means, whereby consciousness is produced. The 12 ayatanas are object of sight, object of hearing, object of smell, object of taste, touch, thought, color and shape, sound, order, and taste, tangible or touch, non-sensuous object, etc. Dhatu is called factors of consciousness or correctly the elements of existence regarded from the standpoint of consciousness and its cause. Dhatu means race, element or gotra. It is also called source of its own species, the allied cause of the origin of mind and mental state. In Abhidharma Kosha, 18 dhatus has been mentioned, namely sense of vision, sense of audition, sense of smelling, sense of taste, sense of touch, consciousness, color, sense of order, uh, sense of tangible touch, non-sensuous, visual consciousness, and so on. 18, total 18 numbers. Now let's not get deep into these elements of Nama Rupa. It has been explicitly discussed in Abhidharma Kosha Bhashyam. We may find these things described elaborately in books like Abhidharma Kosha Bhashyam, translated by M.L. Pruden, or the analysis of Abhidharma Kosha by Sukamal Chaudhary. We can get a very explicit elaboration of these ayatanas and dhatu. So without going deep into that, instead let's see how a man transforms from an ordinary state to the enlightened one. It all starts with the concept of three lakshana, or the threefold characteristics of the world. It is the most fundamental teachings of Buddha, out of which the entire Buddhism has been derived. They are impermanence, anitya, non-self, anatma, and suffering, dukkha. These three characteristics are mentioned in verse 277, 278, 279 of the Dhammapada. That humans are subject to delusion about the three marks, that this delusion results in suffering, and that removal of that delusion results in the end of suffering is a central theme in the Buddhist Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Anitya or impermanence means that all conditioned things are in a constant state of flux. Buddhism states that all physical and mental events come into being and dissolve. Human life embodies this flux in the aging process and the cycle of repeated birth and death, samsara. Nothing lasts and everything decays. Dukkha means unsatisfactoriness, suffering or pain. The dukkha includes the physical and mental suffering that follows each rebirth, aging, illness, dying, dissatisfaction from getting what a being wishes to avoid or not getting the desired, and no satisfaction from samsara dukkha, in which everything is conditioned and conditioning, or because all these are not experienced as impermanent and without essence. Finally, the anatma refers to the doctrine of non-self, that there is no unchanging permanent self or soul in living beings, and no abiding essence in anything or phenomena. In Buddhism, ignorance of the three marks of existence is regarded as the first link in the overall process of samsara, whereby a being is subject to repeat existence in an endless cycle of suffering. As a consequence, dissolving that ignorance through direct insight into the three marks is said to bring an end to the samsara, and as a result to the suffering as described in the third and fourth noble truth. Now the question may be raised, how is ignorance or avidya to be conquered? According to Buddha, a man can get rid of ignorance by clearly comprehending the truths of the nature of existence and acquiring perfect insight and wisdom, leading to non-attachment, tranquility, freedom, and bliss, or in short, by attaining nirvana. But one would like to know whether there is a path to nirvana or not. The answer to this question is in the fourth noble truth. There is indeed a path discovered by Buddha himself. It is the noble eightfold path, or the Ashtangika Marga, which is the perfect blending of knowledge and conduct. The 8 steps of the path are as follows, namely right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. At this point, we need to say a few words about Nibbana, which is derived from the root na and bana, which literally means no misery. In course of Nirvana, Buddha recognized 4 distinct levels of realization, each marked by a deep, unmistakable experience of selflessness, followed by certain changes in outlook and behavior. The experience generally occurs during intensive meditation when the attention has become one-pointed and follows extensive study and understanding of the basic truths of Buddhism, especially the 3 marks of existence, namely selflessness, impermanence, and dukkha. The 4 stages of enlightenment are Uttapana, Sakidagami, Anagami, and Arhat. The teaching of the 4 stages is a central element of the early Buddhist school. And the first one, as we said, is called Sottapana. You can translate it as the stream enterer. The first stage is that of Sottapana, or in Sanskrit, Sottapana, literally meaning one who enters the stream. Here, the stream being the noble eightfold path, regarded as the highest dharma. The stream enterer is also said to have opened an eye of the dharma and guaranteed enlightenment after no more than 7 successive rebirths, possibly fewer. The stream enterer can also be sure that he will not be reborn in any of the unhappy state of rebirth like an animal or so. He can only be reborn as a human being. The stream enterer has attained an intuitive grasp of Buddhist doctrine, Samyak Drishti or right view, and has complete confidence or Shraddha in the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and has good moral behavior, Sila. When one becomes a stream enterer, one can never again believe that you are really a separated self that lives inside your head or looks through your eyes. Your experience forever eliminates this illusion. When you look within, you can't find a self anywhere. In everyday life, however, you may still feel like a separated somebody and may still get caught up by greed, anger, ignorance, and negative feelings and patterns. Fortunately, the stage of stream enterer also brings an unshakable confidence and dedication to the Buddhist spiritual path. So, you are motivated to keep deepening and refining your realization. The second one is called Sakidagami, or the once returner. The second stage of Nirvana is that of the Sakidagami, which means once returner. The once returner will return to the human world only one more time and will attain Nirvana in that life. After you become a stream enterer, your practice includes reminding yourself of your new realization of no self, as well as paying attention to the ways that you are still attached and your resistance to life as it unfolds. After a period of time, like years of practice, in which your concentration gets even stronger and your mind becomes even more tranquil, you have another direct insight into non-self. Remembering, knowing this truth as a concept or memory is one thing, but experiencing it directly beyond the conceptual mind is something else entirely.
conclude
The
करियो
insight, again, sir, in the minute. The insight brings significant reduction in attachment and aversion and the suffering that accompanies this state of mind. For example, occasional irritation and preference replace hatred and greed, which no longer have any hold over the once returner. Again, next stage is called a never returner or the anagami. The third stage is that of anagami, literally meaning one who does not come back. The non-returner does not come back into human existence or any lower world after the death. Instead, he is reborn in one of the worlds of the Rupa Dhatu called the Suddhavasa world or the pure abode, where he will attain nirvana. An anagami has abandoned the 5 lower fetters that binds the mind to the cycle of rebirth, and anagami thus partially enlightened and on the way to perfect and complete enlightenment. And the last one is called arhat. The fourth stage is the arhat, a fully enlightened human being who has abandoned all fetters, all the 10 fetters, and who, upon disease, will not be reborn in any world, having wholly abandoned samskara. At this stage, the path bears ultimate fruit is nirvana. Any residual trace or separated self falls away for good. So this is how I try to bring out a journey of a man from man to Buddha or from ignorance to the enlightenment. Though Buddha never used the word evolution as long as I am known, but we have seen some kind of transformation in his philosophy, like how man transformed into Buddha. So I try to put this here in such way, and obviously I need some suggestion. Thank you very much.
thank you Jagannath for ending in time, and thank you specifically for your non-speculative philosophical account of evolution,
Thank you. Thank you.
bringing in material from Vasubandhu Abhidharma Kosha.
Aଜ୍ଞା.
ତମେ ଯାହା କହିଲ କଥାଟା ଠିକ, ଏଥିରେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ତତ୍ତ୍ୱ ନାହିଁ. This is an account of spirit, and this is an account of the moral man. ନୈତିକ ବିକାଶ କଥା ଅଛି, ବେଦନାର ନାଶ କଥା ଅଛି, that which leads to nirvana.
ଆଜ୍ଞା.
And you began very well that there is no one canonical account. There is no single canonical account of evolution. This is a continuing process, as the scientists should say. But Buddha's account is not a scientific account, neither is it a speculative philosophical account of creation. That's all right. If there is any question addressed to you, you will respond to it. Now I come to the questions. I will come the questions in the chat box one by one. Please attend the symposium.
सर वीडियो ऑन करना है.
Sachin Kumar Babu asks, does evolution continue infinitely according to Vedanta philosophy? Why did Brahman create the universe? This question to Narmada Madam. Dr. Narmada?
Sir, thank you, sir. Okay, sir.
Does
Am I
evolution
audible?
continue infinitely? Yes, you are audible. Does evolution continue infinitely according to Vedanta philosophy? Why did Brahman create the universe? But what was the purpose?
Okay, sir. Sir, evolution is followed by involution. Big Bang followed by Big Cross. The universe is eternal.
That is all. It is a cyclic creation. Cyclic creation. Brahman, Sruti is there, Pralaya is there. But what is the purpose?
Sir, purpose, if we say that Brahman is Satchidananda, Sat Chit Ananda. Out of Ananda, the universe is created. As we have already read from Upanishads, that out of Ananda, this universe arises, and out of Ananda it sustains, and also to Ananda it departs. But evolution is eternal. universe is eternal. Only its states changes. It manifests for some time and
पर्पस कोन जीव मानकु तांको कर्मफल भोग करिया को सुजोग दिया जाउची ना इट इज ओनली अ स्पोर्ट ऑफ ब्रह्मन टू क्रिएट द यूनिवर्स
it is a sport of Brahman. So from transcendental standpoint, there is no universe because we have already said Leela or Maya. Out of Leela or out of Maya, the universe is created. From transcendental standpoint,
the purpose is Leela and the mechanism is Maya. The purpose is Leela. Both are not the same. Sachin Babu has another question addressed to Nandita. Sachin, another question addressed to Nandita. How can the evolution of one species affect the evolution of another according to Darwin? Which type of change in the gunas causes the starting of evolution according to Sankhya evolution? Nandita is there? Connected? Normada tome कहि दियो ता पे तमे तो डार्विन कथा कहउछलो तमे डार्विन कथा भी कहउछलो ए कथा रे कहि दियो how can the evolution of one species affect the evolution of another according to Darwin? Which type of change in the gunas causes the starting of evolution according to Sankhya evolution? ए दीटा कथा रहला कहि दियो.
There are two questions. The first question is, sir, first question how does the evolution of one species affects the evolution of another species? This is the first question. And the answer is that we have already read the struggle for existence. From scientific standpoint, we come to the point the struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest. These are the two basic statements of Darwin, and in the struggle for fittest, naturally the fittest will survive, and that's why how one species or the existence of one species or the evolution of one species affect the other species. This is from Darwinian standpoint, and from if we consider it from philosophical standpoint, I think the answer may be the theory of karma. And according to one's karma, one may affect the existence of other person. But question is from the Darwinian theory of evolution, and these two words are these two sentences are sufficient to describe how the how the evolution of one species affect the evolution of other species. Okay, sir. And the second question is
Sankhya.
Sankhya. The other question is about Sankhya. We have already known that there are two types of changes in the gunas. One is homogeneous change and the other is heterogeneous change. In homogeneous change, the three gunas are in the state of equilibrium. But in the heterogeneous change, when Rajas vibrate, it vibrates the two other gunas. Because Rajas is the nature of activity. And according to its nature, it vibrates and makes the two other gunas vibrate. And that's why creation starts. According to Sankhya, when there is a vibration or change or modification in Rajas, and it naturally affects the two other gunas, at that point of time, evolution starts. This is the opinion of Sankhya, view of Sankhya.
So there is another question. What is the freedom, according to Sankhya, that the Purusha achieves by understanding that it is distinct from matter? It is a question to Amina.
Thank you, sir. As I know that Purusha is eternally free, but one ego, tamasic ego, it is bound Purusha in this world of creation. It's a way, right knowledge, through which we can distinguish Purusha from Prakriti, and then Purusha get liberated.
अच्छा जगन्नाथ कोन साराई में बोल लिखछ कोन तुम कहबो ना कोन
आज्ञा आज्ञा ना सर मो टिके आपन को आ अनरस प्रॉब्लम सारे मन टिके ଗୋଟେ सजेशन मागिया थिला
हां कोन
एक्चुअली मु करूथली जो अरविंद ऊपर एक्चुअली मु प्रिपेयर होतली एंड सेठी मु देखिली कि से केमिति इन्वोल्यूशन कथा कहउछन हाउ स्पिरिट manifests itself in cosmos and in the process the cosmos rise into the spirit ଏଇଟା ସାର୍ ପଢୁ ପଢୁ ମୋର ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ବୁଦ୍ଧିଜିମ୍ କଥାଟା ଟିକେ ମାଇଣ୍ଡ କୁ ଆସିଲା। ବୁଦ୍ଧିଜିମ୍ ରେ ସେମିତି ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ କଥା କୋଉଠି ମେନସନ ହେଇନି, ବଟ୍ ଯେହେତୁ କ୍ରିଏସନ ହେଇଛି and ସୃଷ୍ଟି କଥା ତ ନାହିଁ ସେମାନେ ତ ତାଙ୍କ ହିସାବରେ ସୃଷ୍ଟିଟା ତ ଇଟରନାଲ ମାନେ ରହି ଆସିଛି, there is no stress of when it's created or not। ନା ସାର୍ ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି ଏଇଟାକୁ ଏଇଟା ସାର୍ ଡେଭଲପ କରିହବ କି as an evolution theory of Buddhism?
ସେଇଟା ପ୍ରଫୁଲ୍ଲ ସାର୍ ଗାଇଡ୍ କରିକି ତାଙ୍କୁ ପଚାରିବ, ନହେଲେ ସରୋଜ ସାର୍ ଗାଇଡ୍ କରି ପଚାରିବ।
ମୁଁ କହିବି ଟିକେ କହିବି ଏଠି
ସାର୍।
ଜଗନ୍ନାଥ ଭାବୁଥିଲି ଯେ ସେ ଜଗନ୍ନାଥ ଯୋଉ ବୁଦ୍ଧିଜିମ୍ କଥାଟା ଆଣିଲା ଗୋଟେ ନୂଆ ଟାଇପର ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ କହିବ ବୋଲି, ସେଟା ତ ଠିକ ହେଲା ନାହିଁ, କିନ୍ତୁ you can develop it as a kind of evolution as Das also mentioned. You can develop it as the evolution of the moral man, you know. ଯେମିତି ଆମର ଶ୍ରୀ ଅରବିନ୍ଦଙ୍କ କେସରେ ଆମେ କହୁଛୁ ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ଅଫ କନସିୟସନେସ୍।
ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ଶବ୍ଦ ହବନି, ଏଟା ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ହବ ଏକ୍ସାକ୍ଟଲି।
ବିକାଶ। How morality also evolves and develops. You can in that এই সেন্সে যদি কিছু করি হব, কিন্তু strictly speaking it is not a theory of evolution theory। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ହଉଛି, I have been listening to speakers, they have done good work on Indian theories of evolution and particularly on scientific. Now, there is a question here.
Sir.
How can evolution be possible if Purusha and Prakriti are of completely opposite? ସେଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ବଡ଼ ଜିନିଷ ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଶଙ୍କର କ୍ରିଟିସାଇଜ କରିଥିଲେ, କହିଲେ ଯେ ହେଇପାରିବନି, କାରଣ ଯଦି ତମେ ପୁରୁଷ ପିଓରଲି କନସିୟସ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ପ୍ରକୃତି ଇଜ ପିଓରଲି ଅନକନସିୟସ୍, ତାହେଲେ ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ସନ୍ନିଧି ମାତ୍ରାରେ କିଛି ମୂଲ୍ୟ ରହିବନି। ତେଣୁ ସେଠି ତମକୁ ପ୍ରକୃତିରେ କ'ଣ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ? କ୍ୟାନ୍ ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ବି ପସିବଲ୍ ଆଟ୍ ଅଲ୍ ଇଫ୍ ୟୁ ଟେକ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଭ୍ୟୁ? ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ଫଣ୍ଡାମେଣ୍ଟାଲ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚିନ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ୟୁ ହାଭ୍ ଟୁ all of the symposiums will have to think about it.
Again, sir.
ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ସଜେସନ ଖାଲି ଦେଇଥିଲି, ଗୋଟେ ଅର୍ଡର ସ୍କୁଲରେ ବୋଧେ ସେ ICPR ଜରିଆରେ କହିଥିଲି ଯେ ସେଇଠି କହିଥିଲି ଯେ ପତଞ୍ଜଳି ଯୋଗସୂତ୍ର have tried to meet this criticism of Shankara by saying that yes, they are not absolutely opposite, mind and body, they kind of, there must be some coordination, otherwise evolution will not be possible. In this line, symposiums may also think and develop their theories of evolution, particularly with reference to Sankhya. Okay.
हाँ सर, आ गोटे कथा एठी गोटे वाक्य करिकरी ताको शेष करिवि। प्रकृତରେ ଶଙ୍କରାଚାର୍ଯ୍ୟଙ୍କର ମତ ହେଲା ଯେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଫିଲୋସଫି କଲଚରରେ ଅନେକ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ତତ୍ତ୍ୱ ଅଛି, ଯେମିତି ଜଗନ୍ନାଥ କହିଲେ ସେ ଅନ୍ତତଃ 64ଟା ସୃଷ୍ଟି ତତ୍ତ୍ୱ ଅଛି ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଉଛି। କିନ୍ତୁ ଶଙ୍କରଙ୍କର ପୋଜିସନ ହେଲା ଯେ ନ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ବାକ୍ୟାନାମ ସୃଷ୍ଟୌ ତାତ୍ପର୍ଯ୍ୟମ୍ ଅଦ୍ୱୟ ବ୍ରହ୍ମଣୀ ଏବ। ସୃଷ୍ଟି ବାକ୍ୟ ଯାହା ଯୋଉଠି ସବୁ କୁହାଯାଇଛି ସେଗୁଡା ସବୁ ହେଲା ତାର ପୂର୍ବ ପକ୍ଷ। ସେଠି ସୃଷ୍ଟି କେମିତି ହେଇଛି ତାର ତାତ୍ପର୍ଯ୍ୟ କଥା ଫିଲୋସଫର ଜମା କନସର୍ନ ନୁହେଁ, କେବଳ ଅଦ୍ୱୟ ବ୍ରହ୍ମଙ୍କର ପ୍ରମାଣ ସିଦ୍ଧ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ସେଗୁଡିକ ଫିଲୋସଫର ବ୍ୟବହାର କରିବ ଆଜ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଅର୍ଡର ଆକ୍ଟିଭିଟି।
With a presupposition, preconceived idea.
that is the ପୂର୍ବ ପକ୍ଷ ନେଇକିରି
ଥିଲା କହିଲ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ଚିନ୍ତକା ନିରର୍ଥକ କାଲି ଡିସ୍କସ
Yeah, ନିରର୍ଥକ ମାନେ ସେ ଫିଲୋସଫିରେ କୋର୍ସ ଆଭେଲେବଲ ନାହିଁ। It doesn't have anything to do with philosophy.
Yeah, if it is illusory modification, Brahma Vivartavada ଟା କ'ଣ illusory modification? So the theory of evolution is non-starter here. Evolution ହେଲା
ପୁରା ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ୟାଟେଗୋରୀର ତତ୍ତ୍ୱ ହେଇଗଲା ନା ସେ ତାର ମଡିଫିକେସନ କରିକି।
Yes, interesting. Yes. Okay.
So I thank all the symposiasts, Narmada, then Nandita, Jagannath, Mamina. I also thank Alkananda, although she is absent. she would submit her presentation later on for publication. So I thank all
Thank
of
you,
them,
sir.
and I thank all the participants who have participated in the discussion, including our review Saurabh sir and Praful sir. And I now hand over the microphone.
Sir, sorry for intervention.
I must thank
Sorry for intervention.
I hand over the microphone to Lakshman. I do not have microphone now.
Okay.
Hand it over.
sir kon कहउथिले कोन
ए जाको तुमको I have handed over.
Thank Professor Ganesh Prasad
Lakshman
Das.
sir.
हां सर
Symposium so well. Actually, we have learned more from his remarks than the participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Grateful to you.
You have been very doing it so well, summarizing and making comments. The participants must have been benefited very much by your comments and very constructive comments. They are not questions, but they are suggestions for improvement. Thank you very much. You have done
Thank
it
you,
so
sir.
well.
Thank you, sir. Grateful to you, sir. Namaskar.
Lakshman sir.
हां सर कोन
Lakshman sir.
हां सर कोन
सुनुचंदी?
हां सुनुची कोन
I wanted a clarification from Narmada madam that as regard to creation of the world, how existence is not possible out of non-existence entity.
अरे बाबा
Please
तमे
explain.
तमे से बॉक्स रे चैट बॉक्स रे देलोनी क्वेश्चन तमक इनवाइट कराइतला को सेमिनार ओवर ही साला पर पुन और कोन पचरचो ता परे पचरी ता क्वेश्चन आदे करिवो
Sir, ଦେଇଥିଲି sir.
थैंक यू सो मच
हो सर ऐसे पर मैडम सहित आम आलोचना करी आपण आंसर मु कहबी से चैट बॉक्स रे लिखि देबे
क्वेश्चन गलानी की क्वेश्चन गलानी
बॉक्स रे आपनकर क्वेश्चन आछे ओ लेट होला
मुझे तो कोउनी त नथिला मु कहला बे नथिला
Oh, thank you sir, doesn't matter.
हो मु मैडम
Okay,
कहबी से आंसर लिखि देबे
you will get your response after this session.
You will give the answer, sir, please.
हो मो पर रहला बाकी हो कोन
Okay, sir, okay,
thank you thank you chairperson Professor Ganesh Prasad Das.
Thank you.
I express my heartful thanks to you, sir, for your nicely management within the time. I also express the paper readers, symposiast, Dr. Narmada Kumari Parida, Srimati Nandira Chotray, Mr. Jagannath Prasad Mahanti, and Srimati Mamina Sahu. It was a very beautiful session. Now we are going to last academic session. Our last academic session is will chair by Sri Vijay Kumar Nayak, and in ethics and social philosophy section. So there are the 18 papers. So I request to our chairperson, as far as possible, to go within the time schedule.
Okay.